Hello and welcome to the Spiritual Pilot course, and this is section 1, and we're excited to have you part of this journey, and stay tuned throughout this section because we're going to cover the importance of spirituality. And as you know, we need spirituality in our lives because of the many things that happen during our times of struggle, during our times of challenge. So here we are in section 1 of the Spiritual Pilot course, and this section is called The Importance of Spirituality. As you know, in life as we journey, regardless of our age and regardless of the time that we may be going through in particular parts of our lives, we're inevitably gonna encounter seasons of struggle. And so spirituality is important because it's gonna create the strength that we need to withstand. And as the old saying goes, if you're gonna stand, stand with strength and be fortified, be steadfast. In other words, be immovable. We may not know this, but in everyday life, we will encounter spiritual battles. But what do I mean by spiritual battles? Well, we have a spirit, and of course, a spirit can make reference to many things. It can be a spirit of sadness. I want this to relate more to our inner being, that very deep seat of emotions, the spirit. And so when we're going through certain things in life, it can affect our spirit. And this is what I mean by spiritual battles. Spirituality is going to create that strength that we need when we are feeling certain emotions. And of course, these are some of the things that may come up in our lives, and that is health struggles. You may have gone to the doctor and they told you you had a certain condition, and you, of course, did not expect this, and it becomes a devastation, and it becomes maybe to the point where you feel depressed and you do not know how to move on. And so maybe hearing some bad news about our health can certainly be a blow to our spirit. And this is why it's important that we stay strong in our minds and in our hearts. And of course, there may be some points in our lives where we are struggling in our finances. And especially if you are younger, starting out in life, you're trying to establish yourself financially. And sometimes we want to get ahead of the game. And man, I wish I had money now. I wish I had this nice car now. I wish I had this house now. And so this can be sometimes the mindset that we take in our younger years, and even in our middle age or even in our older years. It does not matter our age. And so financial hardship can certainly destroy the spirit if we are not careful. It can certainly destroy things in our intimate relationships, as that is one of the most prominent things that come up in a relationship: financial security. Certainly, spirituality and the powerful practice of it can help us in our intimate relationships. And we may have gone through a breakup. We may have gone through divorce. We may have gone through infidelity, lying, cheating, a mistrust. These are certainly things that will weigh on our spirit. And if we, again, are not fortified and prepared in our mind, it certainly can cripple us. And intimate relationships are very important because they can be the glue or they can be the destroyer of our spirit if we do not handle these situations carefully. And I want to assure us that when we come into this world, we come into this world to suffer in certain areas. And take a moment to think about why it is necessary to suffer in some of these areas. Well, when you compare and contrast, let's say a simple example of light and darkness. And in order to appreciate the light, there has to be darkness. In order to appreciate joy and peace, there had to been at one time sadness and struggle. And so keep this in mind, because when we are going through the journey of suffering, and sometimes we feel lost in the world and we do not know where we are going, and we begin to build resentment and anger. Maybe we start taking it out on our partner, or maybe we start taking it out on a family member or friends. And this resentment and all these negative emotions build, and we have to come to our senses. We have to tap into our inner strength and our spirit, because when we accept that we are born into this world to suffer certain things, and when the good times come and we are feeling joyful, we are feeling that genuine peace in our spirit. We have the spirit of joy. We have the spirit of giving. And this is going to be able to help us to understand, wow, I really appreciate this moment right now, how much I'm enjoying myself, how much happiness I'm experiencing. And if we had not gone through that financial hardship, if we had not gone through that breakup or that certain relationship that we thought, woe is me, because I had to go through these certain things in the relationship. Woe is me because I had to suffer in my health. But sometimes this is a very powerful spiritual teaching, in that there is a saying that goes, count it all joy when you fall into struggle, when you fall into tribulations and trials. Why? How can I be happy when I'm broke? How can I be happy when I can't even gather the strength to go do something, such as take a little walk for my health? How can I be happy when I found out my partner was cheating on me? And so this is a very, absurd statement, as we may interpret it as, but think about it. What good is it going to do us if we add more coal to the fire? What good is it going to do to us if we complain and we allow more negativity to enter into our spirit? And so the seasons of struggle are necessary. Why? Because when we count it all joy in these times of struggle, in the end, as the old script says, it's going to give us the patience that we need. We're going to develop a strong spiritual armor. It's going to give us the understanding. And as some might say, this passes all understanding, and it is peace. So indeed, spirituality creates strength in many aspects in our lives. And when we go through these certain things, we will be prepared to stand strong and to stand with all our might and stay above water. Now I want to introduce to you the pillars of spiritual prosperity. Spirituality creates well-being. And one of the areas that I want to begin to cover here is the love for being, or consciousness. Now, later on in the course, this is a sequence that we are going through, and it is important that we develop to later discussions about consciousness and how the human constitution is made up, and that is later to come in one of the sections. But here I would like to say the love for being simply means that we tap into that very deep seat of our emotions, of our spirit, and some like to call this the soul. And what is consciousness? Well, consciousness is intangible. It is not subject to the laws of this world. In other words, it does not deteriorate. It has energy. And sometimes we like to use the word universe. Sometimes we may use the word spiritual being or even God. Whatever the word that you choose, what matters more is that this is source. This is where our deep set of decisions are made. This is where we can operate out of wisdom. And this is separate from the body. This is separate from the ego or even our mind, because there are two parts that we might hear sometimes. You have a mind, of course, and this is a mental faculty that we need to function in this world. And then we have the spiritual mind, and this is what I'm more concerned with in this course, is consciousness, because that is going to be the very deep seat, which I also like to call the soul. And it is important that we have a love for being, for consciousness, for the soul, because when we become passionate about this area, it's going to help us greatly spiritually to create well-being. Have you ever been in a state of your life when you want to isolate and you just do not want to interact with anybody? Maybe you live alone, and that's fine. Maybe you just do not like to sit in crowded areas in certain restaurants, and you just want some peace, and you don't want to feel crowded, and that's fine. There's some times where I desire that as well. And what I'm talking about here is when we begin to love being and consciousness, that is going to start to radiate, and that's going to be a reflection of who we are. You take, for example, maybe going into the grocery store or just checking out some things in the grocery store, and sometimes we can notice right away the spirit of the other person. They do not smile. They do not greet you. They're just checking out the items. They seemingly have no joy because we are radiating certain energies and vibrations. This is why the human spirit is powerful, because we will be able to recognize that coming from the other person. And so this is why one of the first pillars of spiritual prosperity is that we have a love for being or consciousness, because it operates separately from the ego, which is always trying to tug at us to lash out in anger. Oh, you should have yelled at that person for being rude to you like that. Or, you should have done something back to that person who cut you off in traffic. You should have sped up and cut them off. And you may hear things like this. This is certainly the ego. When we are in being or when we are in consciousness and we are balanced spiritually, this is going to set us up to have a love for others. And we know the golden statement that says, treat others as you would want to be treated. And of course, this is a traditional saying, and it can be true if we practice it. Why are we going to take it out on others when we can be balanced and treat others with respect? It is a much more healthy spiritual practice. Why are we going to react when we can be giving, when we are able to give to other people? And so this is why I add one of the pillars of spiritual prosperity to be the love for others, because we are here to shine our lights. We are here to be good examples unto others. We are here to encourage, to inspire others to do good and to be successful not only financially, not only through materialism, but more importantly, through spiritual prosperity. And when we begin to implement and practice the pillars of the love for being, the love for others, this develops into a holistic practice, which is the love for life. And sometimes you may hear stories about rich people reaching the apex of financial freedom and materialism, and they have all the desires of their heart, and it's a love for those things, but there is sometimes a void. There is sometimes a void in this because they have not filled in the proper pillars, which is the first two that we have shared here. And ultimately, those are supposed to help us to have a love for life. What is true happiness? You know, I'm reminded of the old king, King Solomon, who said that everything was just in vain. And when you begin to study about the story of King Solomon, you will understand that he had every desire of his heart. He had richness. He had wisdom. You know, people from afar would come to him to ask him questions, and he would share his great wisdom. You know, he had everything he wanted in the world, but there was something missing, and that was that he saw that everything is in vain. It's like it passes, but what remains is wisdom, spirituality, consciousness, and this is a lesson that Solomon had to learn in his life. And even Jesus said, the great spiritual teacher, "What does it profit a man if he should gain the whole world and lose his soul?" When we dive deeper into that spiritual parable, what is it going to profit when we reach that point where we have all the money that we need and want? What is it going to profit when we have a nice car sitting in the driveway, or we have a fancy house? How is that going to help us when we are sometimes diagnosed with something in our health? How is that going to help us in our intimate relationships when we are having arguments or financial struggles or a problem with trust? How is all the money in the world going to help us with that? Yes, we can get counseling, and money can provide certain things and give us resources, but in reality, the only person that can help us to grow, to change, to transform is ourself, our conscious self. Not the self that is going to allow us to stray away. Not the self that is going to tell us to react in this certain situation. Not the self that is going to tell us to say rude things to other people. It's going to be the spiritual self that is going to teach us that yes, through suffering, that yes, through all these struggles and challenges, in order to have a love for life and a true happiness, it will only come through consciousness. If you would allow me now to use the analogy of the spiritual butterfly, we know that spirituality creates transformation. Think about the butterfly, the stages that it has to go through. It first starts out as the egg. Then it reaches the larva stage. And now we have the pupa or metamorphosis. This is the stage where it is rapidly changing. It's transforming. And then finally, the finish process of all of this is the butterfly. And I give this example, and you may have heard this example, of course, in other teachings or other speakers or spiritual teachers sharing this process. This is how it can relate to us. What is the very first thing that we have to do sometimes in our lives. And I want to introduce to you an ancient text that was written by Paul, and he said that we must renew the mind. And the passage goes and says this: "And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." And what does this mean? What exactly does this mean? Well, he was making reference to a group of people saying that do not be fashioned or shaped to this world. Because you think about it, there is another old saying, when you hang around certain people that are practicing certain things, what happens? You become like them. If you're hanging around people that love to gossip and complain, and it is entering into your spirit, guess what's going to happen? Eventually, through time, you're automatically, and your subconscious, not even thinking about it, is going to act like that. And so we cannot be fashioned unto this world, is the spiritual teaching here. We should not be shaped like them. In other words, we are different. We have a spiritual being, a consciousness that allows us to separate from that and be different. We are distinct. We handle problems differently. We handle our problems with a spiritual peace, with a spiritual balance. But I share this passage because I want to make the point that just because we now know a passage or we know other teachings, that knowledge alone is not wisdom. What is wisdom? Well, wisdom comes from the Greek word Sophia. And what this simply means is that it is knowledge and understanding applied. And when we gain an understanding of something, we can be intelligent. You think about the great people of this world, men and women who have created great things, inventions, and this is an intelligence. But this does not necessarily mean that they have wisdom. Wisdom is being able to choose the best course of action in any given situation. Wisdom is taking the knowledge and the understanding and applying it to our lives so that we can have the best outcome possible in that situation. Are there going to be times when we are not able to make decisions because they're so hard and we feel like we're in a dilemma? Yes. But wisdom will teach us, and through experiences of our lives, when we culminate into a better being, when we start to become more aware of consciousness, eventually wisdom is going to feed our spirit in our entire being to make the best decision. So knowledge alone is not wisdom. The powerful practice of spiritual application is where, if you want to say, the secret is. There's other people always teaching about, well, this is the secret to success. Well, this is the secret, to building an empire and so on and so forth, to building a legacy. But the secret really is the powerful practice of spiritual application. This is the importance of spirituality. It's not how much money that we have in the bank. It's not what kind of car that we drive. It's not how our partner looks, in society standards, that they are beautiful or handsome. It's not about these things. It's about having a transformed mind. It's about being spiritual and being able to transform through a powerful spiritual practice. So when we put all this lesson together in section 1 of this course, spirituality creates strength. Spirituality creates well-being. And spirituality creates transformation. And this is why we first share this section, how important this can be in every aspect of our lives. And so, thank you for sticking with us through this section. I can't wait to share the next section with you as we are journeying together in this life and as we are both growing spiritually, and as we are seeking true happiness, and that is through being, and that is through spiritual balance.